でも今じゃそんなこと忘れて何かから逃げるように前のチャラかと見過ごしてた景色は億千万億千万突き去りしきさずはグラビティ君がくれた勇気は億千万億千万過ぎ去りし季節はもうドラマティー
Greetings, friends. Buzzsaw the Righteous here, and, you know, getting into making countdowns, I can't help but admire those other countdown creators who have perfected their craft. Man, what I wouldn't give to be like them. I'm thinking, you know what I should do? I should copy off of them, their style, their music. Yeah, I should do that, except add a bit of Buzzsaw flair to it. Yeah, I'll get more subscribers for sure. I'll be better than them. I'll be famous. And then they'll be the ones asking me for an autograph. Yeah, I should do that. Or I should just shut up, suck it up, do my own thing, and get subscribers on my own merits instead of acting like a jealous fanboy. So, let's give it the old college try once again. Power on, everybody. Has there ever been that one person in your life, be it a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or even a complete stranger, who seems to just have it all and you find yourself saying, gosh, I wish I was that guy? Such a feeling of longing is often described as envy or jealousy. And if you let it grow, such jealousy could wreck your life and damage any relationships you have. Don't believe me? Well, here's 10 characters in video games that have that raging green-eyed monster bursting out more times than not. I'm ranking all of them based upon how great their jealousy is and whether they overcome it or let it consume them. And as usual, only one character per franchise, and as this reveals certain story plots, spoilers are everywhere. Hey, don't be jealous. It's only the start of the countdown. Are we really starting with the most obvious choice first? Well, no time like the present, so... Luigi. Let's face facts. Poor Luigi's really had it rough. He's always been player 2, the eternal understudy, the green Mario, green guy, green stash, the guy who gets left behind. Even, as Verity once put it,
always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Oh no, she didn't!
And there have been a few instances both in and out of the Mario universe where he has shown some resentment towards his older brother. For starters, in the first Paper Mario, you find that Luigi keeps a diary hidden in a secret room in their house. And there are entries where he complains about being left behind and actually admits his jealousy. In Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Luigi's then final smash, the Negative Zone, is revealed from its trophy description as, and I quote, a reflection of the dark side he embraced in his brother's shadow.
That is like creepy dark, dude.
And let's not forget Mario Kart and the famous Luigi death stare.
Okay, getting darker.
While Luigi is an obvious example of being jealous, I placed him so low on the list because, despite his resentment, he often puts it to the side or even throws it away altogether due to it being overtaken by his devotion towards Mario. He loves his brother and is willing to put Mario's needs before him to either save him when he's in danger or support him when he needs it. And Mario definitely doesn't look down on his brother either, always supporting Luigi and rooting for him in return, proving that brotherly love can overcome any destructive jealousy. Hang in there, Luigi. We're rooting for you, Mr. Green, mustache-looking Mario guy. Sorry. When you were in school, have you ever tried to get in good graces with the teacher only for him or her to favor another student over you despite all your hard work? That is sure to create quite an inferiority complex as well as resentment. Now imagine your teacher being your father and he favors your best friend as the protector of mankind over you. You mad, bro?
Here we go.
Castlevania: Circle of the Moon. Once again, Dracula rises from the grave, And with no Belmonts around, the heroes this time are the protagonist Nathan Graves, his teacher Morris Baldwin, and his son and Nathan's friend, Hugh. After his dad gets kidnapped by Dracula, Hugh immediately tells Nathan that he can save his father without his help, instantly revealing his need to show off and prove he's better than him. Okay, Hugh, buddy, your dad just got kidnapped by a vampire demigod. There is legions of undead monsters out to kill you, and you honestly think you can handle it all on your own. Saving your dad with whatever help possible should be more important than stroking your bruised ego. Common sense! Needless to say, it gets steadily worse. Throughout the adventure, Hugh becomes more and more nasty, belittling Nathan each time they meet, all leading up to their eventual clash near the end of the game. After defeating him, he admits his jealousy and finally realizes why his father chose Nathan over him. And apparently Dracula was the one who brought out that envy to take control of him and set him against Nathan.
Right.
Thankfully, he pulls through for everybody and helps Morris out of the castle while Nathan fights against Dracula for the last time. At the end of it all, Hugh reconciles with Nathan and restarts his training under his father's wing, though he still has a bit of that smugness towards Nathan. Gonna blame Dracula for that too? Kingdom Hearts. The timeless, over-convoluted tale of a group of island kids and their adventures with anthropomorphic Disney characters. And 2 of them fighting over a girl. Go figure. Throughout their young life, Sora and Riku have always been best friends, often racing together, playing with toy swords, and trading star-shaped fruit with one another that has whatever to do with destiny. But after the Heartless destroy their island, they all get scattered everywhere, with Riku ending up in the clutches of the self-appointed mistress of all evil herself, Maleficent. And as the adventure unfolds, Riku is told some honeyed lies by the mean old witch, including telling him that Sora has abandoned him and Kairi in favor of adventures with Donald and Goofy. Oh, come on! They've been friends for a long time! There's no way he could fall for...
You only seem interested in running around and showing off that Keyblade these days. Do you even want to save Kairi?
Well, where are Donald and Goofy?
Are they that important to you? More important than old friends? Maleficent was right. You don't have what it takes to save Kairi.
Yep. Hook, line, and sinker. Long story short, he barbs Sora up to their eventual duel. He gives into the darkness and becomes a vessel for Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness. He breaks free after Ansem's defeat, helps Sora seal up Kingdom Hearts, and goes on a long quest of cleansing and redemption. They finally reunite near the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, and after defeating Xemnas, reconciles with Sora and both talk it out about one's envy over the other. Since then, their bond has become stronger, and like Mario and Luigi, there is nothing at all that these two would do for one another, all things considered. Oh, little side note, at the end of Dream Drop Distance, Riku becomes a Keyblade Master ahead of Sora. If he were still being a jealous rival towards Sora, he'd be bragging until the end of time itself. Score 1 for humility. Since revamping my approach towards making countdowns, I've actually gotten acquainted with games I've never played that everyone just never stops talking about. That brings us to Persona 5, a game all about high school drama, social and political intrigue, and surrealistic metaverse hijinks. And pudgy little ninja kitties.
Meow, 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 meow.
All of the bosses featured in this game try to reflect all of the 7 deadly sins in interesting sort of ways, including a lecherous volleyball teacher, a greedy corporate CEO, and number 7 on our list, Sai Nijima. Ever been or known that sole breadwinner in the family who works an awful lot and can never quite get ahead despite all her hard work? That's pretty much Sai Nijima in a nutshell. Working as a prosecutor, she is incredibly overworked and exhausted, and despite everything she does, she rarely ever gets ahead due to being a working woman in a man's world, which apparently is especially tough in Japan. And after her policeman father's death, Sai is stuck with raising her younger sister Makoto alone, which is never easy no matter how much you work. All of this combined causes her to be very resentful towards her peers and imbue upon her a rather warped sense of justice, causing her to do some questionable things just to get ahead. And she even levels a bit of that envy towards Makoto at one point. Just listen.
Isn't it about time you grew up and acknowledged our situation? Right now, you're useless to me. All you do is eat away at my life.
Harsh.
Sai's unique brand of resentment is mirrored in her shadow form in the metaverse, where she is the mistress of a giant casino always rigged to be in her favor. Heck, her boss battle, which may I add takes place atop a giant roulette wheel, is rigged in her favor until the Shadow Thieves manage to figure it all out. Funnily enough, they don't steal her treasure and convince her to change her ways on her own, which works out in the end as long as you answer her questions right. Ultimately, Sai ends up helping the good guys and quits her job to become a defense attorney, proving that when you make the right choices, justice comes through in the end. And ensures a good ending. Most media in the 80s and 90s, including old-timey video games, often depicted villains of that era as typical wanna-rule-the-world type villains with no clear reason as to why. Heck, the original Mega Man series had Dr. Wily depicted as one such villain, until Mega Man 11 finally laid bare his clear resentment towards Dr. Light. Sadly, this alone doesn't make Dr. Wily eligible for this list. So we're going to the other Dr. Wily. This Dr. Wily. Mega Man Battle Network. This series trades killer robot battles with killer cyber virus shenanigans. A lot of the characters are reimagined versions of classic characters tailor-made for the series, even some from the X and Legends series. And as expected, it has its own Dr. Wily, and unlike the classic version, this one's jealousy is shown almost right off the bat. Like Mega Man 11, Wily's robotic research is turned down in favor of advanced internet research done by the series version of Dr. Light, Tadashi Hikari. And as expected, he does not take this well, and soon harbors a deep resentment and hatred towards the very net society Tadashi helped create, leading to almost every bad thing happening in the series, even letting it almost getting him killed a few times. Ironically, it is Tadashi's grandson, Lan Hikari, and his friends who lead the charge against Wily, and in the sixth and last game in the series, he finally convinces him to let go of his long-held envy, and ultimately he turns good at the end after paying his debt to society. In the epilogue, it is said that he even helps Net Society grow in the later years, proving that, like the previous entries on this list, you can overcome your own created demons and lead a better, more satisfying life. Can't say the same for the next 5, though. Hey, here's another game that has to do with the 7 deadly sins, Dead Rising 3. The series as a whole is an interesting take on the survival horror type of games, what with you MacGyvering through hordes of zombies and showing you how absolutely not to react and cope with a zombie apocalypse. Which brings us to the psychopath bosses. In an optional side quest in Dead Rising 3, the protagonist Nick meets up with Kenny, a normal-looking nerd who is apparently having self-esteem issues in the midst of the outbreak. That is until Nick shows him a few moves as well as how to make weapons on the fly. Doing this gets Kenny his self-esteem back, and he then becomes the self-appointed protector of humanity, and all seems to be well. Until you progress further in the game. Oh boy. Later in the game, you run into Kenny again, and he berates you for saving a girl that he wanted to rescue. And by rescue, I mean tying a girl to a pole and killing any zombies near her so he can be the dashing hero saving the distressed damsel. Yeah, safe to say Kick, now has some jealousy/hero worship issues and is not at all taking kindly to Nick's intervention.
You can't just go around saving people's lives, Nick. No, that's me, okay? That's me. I'm the hero. I'm the one that's been training years in my mom's basement for this shit. Me! I'm the one. Just watch me. Anything you can do, I can do it better.
Wow! Training for years in your mom's basement, huh? Now there's a bright spot on your hero resume.
His boss battle seems pretty simple, and his jealousy happens to serve as a real boss weakness. When you create weapons during the boss battle, he throws a temper tantrum and is left vulnerable to attack. After beating him, you are actually given a choice as to Kenny's ultimate fate. You can either let the zombies kill him, or...
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastards!
I am truly sorry, but that was too good a joke to pass up.
Or you can, be super forgiving and save him from the zombie swarm. The humbled Kenny then apologizes, says he won't be any more trouble, and becomes another ally in your quest to survive. Way to show some gratitude, Kenny, but don't kidnap any more girls, okay? They won't think you're so hot for doing that. Numbers 10 through 6 are prime examples of overcoming the sin of jealousy, and Kenny in the previous number shows how humbled and gracious a jealous person can be when you choose to show forgiveness and grace. Well, now we are up to the last 4, and you can be sure that things are going to get pretty dark from here on out. This leads us to Fire Emblem. The Fire Emblem series has garnered a lot of praise over the years, particularly the more recent games like Awakening and Three Houses. Every game, though, really emphasizes a lot on its massive cast of characters and various story progressions that really reveal each character and their established quirks. So out of this massive tide, where could I find the most envious one? You thought Hugh at number 9 had daddy issues? This time around, it's the daddy that has issues. From Blazing Sword, this is Desmond. Desmond is the king of Bern and married to Helene of Etruria. Though they have a son named Zephiel, it was basically a political marriage and he never truly loved her or their son. The king and queen soon divorced, he exiled them both, and because the people of Bern and his illegitimate daughter Guinevere loved Zephiel more than him, Desmond grew ever more resentful towards his own son. His envy was so bad he ordered a pet fox of Guinevere's killed in secret, simply because Zephiel got it for her as a gift? How petty is this guy? Oh, but it gets worse. His paranoia gets so bad he finally decides to off the young prince, first by secretly hiring assassins to kill him, and when that failed, he is nearly killed with a poisoned drink, but somehow survives that as well. This finally drives Zephiel over the edge, leading him to kill his jealous father during a fake funeral. So the king is dead and all is well, right? Well, sadly, Desmond's actions have far-reaching consequences, giving Zephiel an almost nihilistic view of humanity and ultimately becoming the main antagonist of the game's sequel, The Binding Blade. Desmond is a great example of how bitter envy can turn someone to madness and even destroy families in the process. Is there a family counselor class in Fire Emblem? I'm thinking they could have used that. Remember back in the Dr. Wily segment where I talked about villains being generic take-over-the-world types? Well, it's safe to say that up to a point, Ganon from The Legend of Zelda was that same kind of villain too. In nearly every game in the series, he often tries to take over Hyrule, yet he never offers a valid reason as to why. Even his origin story debut in Ocarina of Time doesn't offer much, except that he leads a gang of thieves in the Gerudo Desert, though this adds to what comes next. Like Dr. Wily with Mega Man 11, it isn't until Wind Waker that we finally gain some insight into Ganon's motivations. Before the final battle, Ganon looks out over the sunken kingdom of Hyrule and laments about how life in the desert and its harsh winds led to suffering and even death.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Yeah, I know. I used a Star Wars prequel clip. If I lose subscribers at the end of this, it's probably why.
And after mentioning the winds of Hyrule and implying on how such winds have brought life, he ends his little soliloquy with the statement on how he coveted that wind. And as any biblical scholar would know, covetousness is a major byproduct of jealousy. This really adds some major depth to the legendary villain's character when you really think about it. Like Sai Nijima's frustrations with her prosecutor job, Ganon's harsh upbringing is ultimately what feeds his resentment and envy towards the kingdom of Hyrule, and soon feeds his need to conquer it by any means necessary. And it all leads to generations and generations of him nearly bringing Hyrule to the brink of ruin, while every Link and Zelda of each generation stops him each time. Should've just moved out and bought a house in Kakariko Village, Ganon. Like I said before, we're heading into some dark territory with these last entries, and you can't get any darker than Dark Souls. The Soulsborne series is almost infamous for its almost extreme difficulty, though I'm reluctant to play it myself because, well, it's just too gloomy. And the gloominess is basically the atmosphere of the entire franchise. The first Dark Souls takes place in a dreary world once ruled by dragons, now ruled by the Lord of Cinder Gwyn, the Witch of Izalith, the Grave Lord Nito, and our first runner-up for this list, Seath the Scaleless. Before teaming up with Gwyn and the other lords, Seath was a dragon born without scales, as his name implies, and was also born without immortality. And apparently in the world of dragons, they're kind of status symbols. Don't have these things? Well, tough, you aren't a real dragon. He soon joins up with the other lords to get back at his dragon brethren, leading up to their eventual genocide. Yeah, he got back at his brothers by killing them. He is then awarded his own archives and a chance to research into methods to gain his coveted immortality, all leading up to the creation of the primordial crystal. So he gets what he wants in the end, so mission accomplished, right? Well, sadly, he gets lost in his research, driving him to madness, and fearing that the other lords would try to take his immortality away, shuts himself off from them entirely. And don't get me started on what it has done to him physically. What happened to his legs? So Seath came to a sad end, all because his jealousy and resentment of the other dragons got to him. Like Desmond, his envy drove him towards being a murderer and caused him to sink into deep madness and isolation, lost only in his research. When one reaches their envious goals without any regard for others, you'd find that those goals aren't very satisfying in the end. And it just leads to tragedy. Nearly every entry on this list shows just how destructive jealousy can be, with Luigi being probably the only one on this list able to put it to the side without hurting himself or anyone else. And while my choice for number 1 may not be on a scale as grand as Ganon making generations of Hyrule suffer or Seath committing genocide against his race of dragons, it also isn't that far off from real life, at least in the case that it could happen but won't. And it is probably the most obscure choice I have made yet, so buckle up, Buttercup, and let's go all the way back to the Sega CD. While the Sega CD was somewhat of a failure, it did churn out a few classics, including Sonic CD and a little game called Snatcher. Touted as a cyberpunk adventure and created by none other than Hideo Kojima, Snatcher was a neat little graphic adventure game where you search for clues, and there's even some subpar shooting segments. And since this was a Konami game, it is chock full of references to other Konami IPs, especially Metal Gear. The narrative itself was engaging, sounding like something off of Blade Runner, and it is so expansive that it would take forever to go through it all, so let me summarize. Taking place in a post-apocalyptic Earth, Snatcher is all about a man named Gillian Seed. He and his wife Jamie were found suffering from amnesia, and Gillian himself finds work as a junker while trying to get his memory back. A junker is a type of detective/hunter looking for biomechanical androids called Snatchers. They're basically like Terminators, but they do their jobs better than them, since they can exhibit emotions and even sweat and bleed. All of Gillian's hard work leads him to the church in the city, where he finds his wife Jamie, who now got her memory back, a 100-year-old man who just died, and the mastermind behind the Snatchers, and probably the most jealous character in video games yet to date, Elijah Modnar.
It's been a while, hasn't it, Jamie? Ah, yes. And Gillian.
Time to go back to the past, to a pre-apocalyptic Earth. Apparently, Elijah was part of a Russian-based research team creating the Snatchers that also comprised of his father Petrovich and Gillian and Jamie. During their work, however, Elijah soon developed an obsessive crush over Jamie and pretty much became the driving force behind his research. Sadly for him, Jamie fell in love with Gillian, got married, and even had a kid. And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough for him, his research was also in jeopardy due to the changing tide of politics around him, and it didn't help that he found out Gillian was an undercover CIA agent working to uncover the project. Needless to say, in an almost short span of time, Elijah was desperate and his envy utterly consumed him.
And you know, there are ways of helping you get over your envy. You could talk things out with a therapist, you could meet new friends, you could take up new hobbies, you know. Try something new that interests you. Or you could be like this guy and release a biological weapon that kills half the world's population and replace the other half with Terminator knockoffs. This guy does not take rejection well.
Yep, Elijah is not just responsible for creating the Snatchers, but also responsible for everything that happened to the world prior to the start of the game. All because he couldn't get with the woman of his dreams. And here's a couple of things to note. He, Gillian, and Jamie all went to sleep in cryogenic pods to protect themselves from the effects of the weapon, only for him to awaken early to continue his research and leaving them asleep, which is what caused their amnesia. During which time he just talked to her and watched over her as she slept. Kind of like Mr. Freeze and his snow globe from Batman, only less tragic and much more creepy. The second thing to note, and this is the kicker, by the time of the game, he has forsaken his love for Jamie and is now dedicated to replacing all of humanity with Snatchers. Holy crap! This guy is the last three entries all thrown into one with a bit of Zephiel thrown in the mix. His love for Jamie and hatred of Gillian led him to unleash a biological weapon that kills half of his own kind, leading to a post-apocalyptic Earth, and then goes from being in love to becoming a full-blown nihilist and replace the rest of humanity with biomechanical androids. That is a whole new level of crazy. And I haven't gotten into what it did to Elijah physically. Again with the legs? What is it with jealous people and their legs? And as expected, he gets his comeuppance in the end, and he and his army of Snatchers gets wiped out. Every entry on this list shows just how bad things could get if you let envy eat away at you. Some were fortunate enough to discard it, others weren't, and it just goes to show that you don't just lose the people you love in life when you give in to jealousy, you lose yourself. And that is truly a tragedy waiting to happen.
My name is Buzzsaw the Righteous, and as I said before, there are ways of dealing with your jealousy. It's not worth destroying your own life and others, so go out there and find something new before it's too late. Who knows? You may surprise yourself and find better happiness than you thought. Thanks for watching, and until we meet again, look sharp and stay righteous.
Well, I can respect your opinion. Sadly, I'm not good at rejection. I'm afraid you'll have to die.